It's Backstage Pass with Steve Ryan. And here's your host, Steve Ryan.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
Hey, Chaz.
Hello there.
How are
How
you,
are
my
you?
friend? I'm good. Well, you look great, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty good actually. Yeah, thank you. How, how,
Well,
how how you doing today?
everything's good here. I was so excited when I got information from Michael that you were working on this new project with the reimagination of DOA, and I wasn't very familiar with that because from an American standpoint, obviously I know who you are because I was a club DJ in the 80s. And
Ooh.
so I know your music very well, your solo stuff. But when I saw that, I was like, what? I don't know, Chaz. I don't know what Chaz has done with this. And so I listened to it and I was kind of blown away. I didn't know about your film scoring and stuff like that. So I just kind of wanted to talk to you about it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really
Yeah.
nice of you. Thank you very much. Um, yeah, well, this is a discussion that is easier to have these days. I mean, when I was younger, much younger as a musician, a professional musician, I used to think there was a contradiction between, like, hey, one part of me wants to make club music, the other part of me loves romantic classical music, the other part of me plays in a punk band, like. But as I get older, I realize that's all in the mind, and actually, audiences have very broad tastes. They're channeled by record labels into different, compartments. Because otherwise, where would they look? I mean, I suppose in a record store, you have to have this kind of compartmentalization. But excuse me, for a musician, you don't want to kind of. And I know a lot of musicians feel they have to have a niche, otherwise they won't get noticed. But somehow I lucked out, Steve. I kind of, I am a butterfly by nature, but my mind flits from one thing to another, but I've always allowed myself that latitude and to be able to experiment in different areas, and a lot of it. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of woodshedding goes on along the way. You can imagine. I mean, if you do something you love, it's never really hard work. I mean, yeah, you put the hours in, but it doesn't feel like that really. And that's what happens is I put a lot of time in, and every now and again I get a result, a commercial result. And that's what's and then and that's what happens in my life really. Yeah, yeah, so the hits I have allows me to sort of carry on being, experimenting, so to speak.
Yeah. Why revisit DOA?
So in 1980, and I don't know, you probably obviously didn't see the film. It was a remake, DOA, of a film noir called DOA. Touchstone decided to do a remake with Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan. It came out on Touchstone, and I did the score. My sister Annabelle Jankel is a director, and she co-directed that movie. And so I moved out to LA, and for quite a while I was out there. When was it? 87, I think it was 87. um and wrote and then got involved with the recording of the score. The problem was that the score was available on Varese Sarabande, the soundtrack label at the time, and then they I think went under. And so after that, from beginning of 1990 onwards till now, you couldn't buy the score. You couldn't. The only way you could listen to it was if you rented the movie.
Right.
And
Yeah.
my wife Elaine had seen the film before we even met, and she really liked DOA, the film. She'd seen it at an indie cinema where she lived before we met. And so, not that long ago, she said to me, isn't it sad that you can't actually get the music anymore?" And so I did look into trying to establish who owned the copyright on it. And Touchstone had been bought and sold to BMG, to Sony. And I tell you what, Steve, trying to track down somebody to talk to, impossible. So I thought, to hell with it. I'm going to remaster it, just represent it.
Yeah.
And as I did that, I started playing around the piano and wrote a piano sonata based, loosely speaking, based upon the themes of the movie. the musical themes. So
Wow.
everything else you hear on that was recorded as it was in on the original score, other than this piano sonata that I added for good measure. Having
Yeah.
now lived with this music for 25, 30 years, now last year, towards the end of last year, I thought, you know what? It happened quite instinctively. I would like to just try and reinterpret it on piano, just simple play all the themes in one go. And that's what you hear in the piano sonata.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Something else I like on that is Dead on Arrival Suite.
Right.
Yeah, it's so
Oh,
beautiful,
the opening
Chaz.
track,
Yeah.
the radio edit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Thank
E-
you. I'm so lucky, just to add just very briefly, that, I mean, these opportunities don't come up very often to work with an orchestra, and LA has some incredibly good, I'd say, classical musicians who, can come in and they can sight read, and they're very sensitive, nice people. And that's why I did it. I recorded at Ocean Way, where I think years gone by, Frank Sinatra recorded with a big orchestra, and a lot of big recordings made there. So it was in a way, a once in a lifetime event for me.
Yeah. I had read that you had, and I don't know if you taught yourself, but you were playing guitar at like 7 years old.
True. Yeah. Yeah. I
So
was.
it was just been in your blood. Yeah.
I
I mean,
suppose so. Yeah. It was. Yeah. I mean, thank God you can make some money out of it. I mean, like,
yeah.
because otherwise, I know a lot of people didn't have the support. I think, I was very lucky. My parents didn't kick me out of the home, when I think a lot of young musicians don't have the same opportunities. So, I mean, I was very fortunate because my dad was in had a garage. He sold secondhand cars, and he gave my sister, my brother, and myself, he lent us cars from the age of 17. And I can't tell you how useful that is. If I had
Wow.
any tip for a young musician, learn how to drive, because, well, in the States, it's a prerequisite, isn't it? But
Right.
I mean, I think, if you don't drive, you just don't get the opportunities.
Yeah.
But my dad giving me a car meant I could, go and uh, come home late, so to speak, and I didn't have to rely on buses, trains, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Can we talk about the Blockheads a little bit?
Yeah, sure,
You know, um, Ian Dury was a interesting character, wasn't he?
absolutely, yeah,
Was he an angry guy or just a sarcastic character?
yeah. He had a sort of ironic twist on life. He was disabled, and grew up in a very strict institution, where in the 50s they bunched people who had brain issues with disability, with people who had disability issues. There was, and so it was a torturous event for Ian, who was very bright, to be, put together with people like that. I think he found it incredibly frustrating. So when we made our first record, New Boots and Panties, he had been in a band called Kilburn and the High Roads before that.
Yeah.
I joined the Kilburns, which was the last formation of that group. But then after a while, well, you'll appreciate this. I mean, they were playing kind of zany, Fellini-esque, rockabilly-ish music, Now I came in and what I brought to the band was funk and soul, because I was really into Afro-American music. I mean, that was when I heard Sly and the Family Stone way back, I thought, this is it,
Yeah.
And I loved it. So I tried to introduce that to the Blockheads. And so I've digressed somewhat, but really Ian was a frustrated man who was a brilliant lyricist. I think he had a right to be very angry with the system. It's more with the system that we saw in England at that time, really.
Yeah. Some of the best stuff, you co-wrote but what I find with the stuff that you wrote with the Blockheads and your solo stuff is there's a little bit more of irreverency, I guess I would say, in the lyrics, and maybe it's British humor that some Americans just don't get. But I see it. I
Yeah.
mean, Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. I mean, what a great song. And it's almost punk funk.
Sex and drugs and rock and roll is all my brain and body need. Sex and drugs and rock and roll is very good indeed.
Like in a way, there's a movie that I did the score for called Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, which came out. I don't know if it's available up online. You might be able to find it. And that sort of described Ian. And funny enough, I was talking about it yesterday. And Andy Serkis, who played Gollum, like in The Hobbit, yeah. So, although it was all a lot of CGI. Anyway, he played Ian Dury in the movie Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. And he did it a brilliant job of it. And Ian was a mixture of emotions and intellect, and he had been at art school. He taught at art school, very much into style, very aware, and just gave me a free hand, really. To paint whatever backdrop I wanted. With the music, and because your background, I mean, you'll probably know about Glad to Know You, and
of course.
And Ian wrote the lyric for that, and it took me years before I understood the irony in Glad to Know You and You're Very Welcome, Pleased to Meet You,
Right.
But some brilliant verses in there, really deep.
Well, that was my introduction to you, Chaz. Was that obviously we played that in the clubs, and it was like I think it was the #1 dance song in the States in 1982 or something like that. I mean, it was huge over here in the dance clubs.
You wandered in upon my life and haven't lost me yet. So Kentucky to the carving knife, what you give is what you get. A fresh and lovely summer's day we thought would never end. Said the bloodhound to the staggered bay, I thought you were my friend.
I came over that way. It was #1 in the Hot 100 for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I came over and I did the Dick Cavett show. I did a Dick Cavett show. It's up online, I think. And it was quite funny because I was the only white guy on the show. And I mean, James Brown was on there, a guy called Junior. You might remember Junior and the Daz Band.
Yeah.
And, the Jones girls were introducing I was behind curtains and I was meant to be coming out and playing Glad to Know You. Mm. Quincy Jones and who was the leader of Earth, Wind and Fire?
Maurice White.
Maurice White, sitting together in the front row, so no pressure.
Yeah.
And so the Jones girls that go, and thank you. And our next artist is Chaz Jankel. He's been voted Dance Artist of the Year. Please put your hands together. People clap. curtains open, and I'm so in my zone. I walk down the front of the stage till I suddenly realize they're playing This Is a Man's World by James Brown in front of about 500 people. See, well,
Yeah.
they just cracked up. And I didn't know what to do. So I kind of did a backwards walking movement up the stairs. The curtains closed, and I went, "You so and so's." I think it was a setup. But then I went out again, and then I did Glad to Know You. But my legs were shaking at that point.
Wow, that's so awesome. You did a little moonwalk right before there was
I did
moonwalk.
a little bit. Yeah, it was.
That's so great. Your stuff. Your stuff is. Did you feel like when you were doing your solo stuff and not official, doing official Blockhead stuff, you could just get a little funkier? Is that more? Was that more appealing to you?
Oh, you mean when I did my own stuff?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, I suppose so. I mean, with the Ian Dury stuff, I love doing it. But even to this day, when we go out and play, we play a mixture. Some of the songs, I would say, a bit more kind of music hall. Some of the, a bit more, or some more punk, more oriented music.
Yeah, yeah.
But if I did my own thing, I could just take it where I wanted to. It was a different space, and that was the case with No Corrida, because when I wrote that, the melody came first, and I was actually on tour with Ian and the Blockheads at the time. But I thought, no, this wouldn't work for Ian because it's too melodic. It's too, so I didn't offer it up to Ian, and well, ultimately, it was the first song on my first album for A&M. But then Quincy Jones was doing his last album for A&M, and he was looking for material, so he got the big hit. It's interesting because you said that you've always looked towards England as your musical influences. Well, I've been going the opposite direction. I think my big loves certainly in contemporary modern music has been in America. America, yeah.
And Quincy loved that song. It was on The Dude, which was a huge album.
I know.
It's me, I'm dreaming, but if it is, don't let me know I'm drowning. Don't save me, it's just the way I like to go. You see, girl, you thrill me, have kill me, that's what you do. I know Corrida, that's where I am. You send me there, my flame is like a man. I know Corrida, by myself.
I mean, what amazing! I mean, I was so happy, and I went over and I had this one time when I met him. I went to his house, and it was at the time when he just released I Know Corrida. It was blowing up for him, and he said, "Hey, Chaz, what are you doing tomorrow night?" And I was there with my manager, and he said, "Michael's playing at the LA Forum," and Michael, oh my God, Michael Jackson. So we went down and we went to the biggest venue I've ever been to, 90,000 people, all on their feet, dancing furiously to Michael Jackson. And who's sitting right behind me? Sly Stone. So I had to stop myself from, stalking him,
One of your heroes.
He was my hero. To be honest, back in the day, then he was. Yeah.
But you didn't turn around. You didn't turn around and introduce yourself?
I did it. No way.
Quincy probably knew him. You should have said, "Quincy, introduce me."
Yeah, I know. Well, Quincy was nowhere to be seen. It was just, but what an event. It was fantastic. Yeah.
I had read, tell me if this is right, that at one point you and Quincy were actually talking about doing a project together, but it never really came together.
Well, the only thing that happened was I had another song about 7 months after he'd recorded I Know Corrida, and I thought, oh, this might work really well for Quincy. And I gave a cassette to my manager to post to him. I got a letter back from Quincy a few months after that saying, "Hey, Chaz, stop teasing me like this. There was nothing on the cassette." I went, oh, my Lord. So I missed that opportunity. And then in retrospect, I listened back to the song and I thought, I think this was a way of just consoling myself. I went, oh, the song wasn't very good. He'd have never liked it anyway. But that was as far as any other project was going to go with Quincy.
Yeah. In 83, Chaz Blanca, there's a song on there that I just love. It's called Whisper. And
Wow.
and the synthesizer work on that, I was just listening to it last night. It's just so great.
Wow.
From the process, I take my joy. Shouting all around takes a whisper to be heard. Shouting all around takes a whisper to be heard.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that a lot of that was provided by a guy called Jamie Lane, who had been the drummer on Casablanca, and we recorded that in Compass Point in the Bahamas, Chris Blackwell's studio. A lot of albums made there, so many different bands recorded there. U2, and we were working with Sly and Robbie. And I'd met Laura Weymouth because she was out there when I went there originally to do Lord Upminster with Ian Dury. We did an album out there, and she was with Tom Tom Club, and they were making their first album. Genius of Love had Genius of Love and Wordy Rapping Hood. And I met Laura, and I wasn't in a relationship. That Laura was Tina Weymouth's sister, one of her sisters, and so we hooked up and. Well, now and again, because she lived in New York, I lived in London. But then we came back, we got together and we went out to the Bahamas, and I recorded most of Casablanca. And she came up with that lyric, when the shouting out all around takes a whisper to be heard. And I thought, wow, this is genius, right? And I loved that, that kind of the spirituality that in her and Jamie. And to be honest, they were putting those synths together, and I by the time I got to the studio one day, it was pretty much in place. I mean, that was wow. I was, so not only was he a drummer, he was a very good keyboard programmer, writer. Yeah.
Another song on that album that I love is "Thank You Very Much."
Oh wow.
And the guitar work on that is so groovy. I mean, it's so perfect. I mean, it just fits so perfect in that time period.
The ocean, you're working hard, but is it really worth it? I can hardly tell just what's going on. I don't want you back. I don't want you here. I don't want you back. Come on back, come on back. Thank you very much. There's lots of girls, I'm looking for distraction.
Yeah. Well, it's lovely. Do you know what? I've never, ever on air talked about, or even to anybody, I think, about that song. It's not one that gets a lot of attention, but yeah. Well, that was back in, when was it? 84, 85, I think I made that. Was it?
Yeah. I had 83.
Oh, yeah. That's quite possible.
Yeah.
No, it's quite possible. Actually, I think you're right. Yeah.
But you know what? I mean, I was thinking about that song when I'm listening to it, and I was thinking this could be an instrumental, and it would be just as satisfying. I mean, the lyrics are like icing on the cake, but the song, I mean, instrumentally, and it doesn't even have to have lyrics.
No, it doesn't. I mean, a lot of time, sometimes I'll put instrumental tracks together as well. I mean, did you know that? I mean, you probably, I don't know, on my first record, which I just called Chaz Jankel, spelt with an S. Well, that was how I used to spell it. Anyway, there was a song on there called Am I Honest With Myself, Really?
Yeah.
And it's 14 and a half minutes long.
Yeah.
And it's sort of in a way preempted, I don't know, it's quite up there in tempo. And it's, what was I going to say? So Ian Dury heard it, and he was with Pete Townsend from The Who one day. And Pete said to Pete, they were friends, and Pete said, yeah, Ian, he said, your mate Chaz, your friend Chaz, he's got a track that's 14 and a half minutes on the side 2 of his album. And Ian went, yeah, I know, it's weird, isn't it? And not a lot more was said, but it was noticed that I was stepping out there. And
yeah. Wow.
I think there was just room to put one more song on it. Actually, funny enough, the song that went after it, Reverie, was just a little piano, like a little piano instrumental. Yeah. which then became the theme for my first film score. An Unsuitable Job for a Woman was the name of the film, and they picked up this piece called Reverie, and that was used in that. So that was great.
Yeah.
That was nice. Yeah.
In '85, Looking at You album came out, and there's a song on there called Number One.
Oh my God.
And I mean, I'm just this was my era because I was working dance clubs, and so I was very familiar with your stuff, and I mean, it was just right up there with kind of a Prince groove. I mean, it's just it actually kind of sounded like Prince before Prince sounded like Prince.
Yeah. Well, who knows? I'd love to think that he got some influence. Like, I'll tell you what was fantastic about that song for me was so Ian wrote the lyric. But I came to New York with it, and Michael Brower, he's a mixing engineer. He mixed Change. Do you remember Change? Give me back, oh my love. I've had a change of heart. Bam, bam. Fantastic 80s soulful act called Change.
Thank you for singing that.
Check it out. Fantastic brand. Anyway, Michael Brower, he mixed them, and I had the wonderful opportunity of him. This came via A&M. He remixed the track, and what you're hearing is this really hot production on the track. And once again, I've never done anything with him since, but I did speak to him a couple of years ago, and he was up for doing something again, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Hey.
Oh, it was also in Mike's Murder. It was also in the movie Mike's Murder, number one.
Wow.
I
love that song. I love that song so much.
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, getting away from the funkiness just for a second, I didn't want to. I know we're getting up on the clock, but I didn't want to forget to ask you about this album that you did with Michael Messer that I just love.
Wow.
It's but it's another avenue for you. It's kind of this bluesy folk kind of thing, guitar driven kind of thing that I just love, and I was shocked when I found it. Tell me about that project.
Yeah, so Michael and Messer actually go back a long way. We were friends 40 years ago. He doesn't mind me saying this now, but he was a hairdresser back then. And
not a barber.
No, he cut men and women's hair, so okay. but he was very, and then we lost contact. And over the years, he just developed this incredible technique, this slide guitar on a resonator guitar. He actually manufactures guitars as well. They sell very well. And it was during lockdown, and we somehow got together again. We just to hang out, and I quite fancied doing something together with him. So I started preparing some tracks and say, hey, check these tunes out. What do you reckon?
Sitting in the front seat in the twilight zone. One day we die, the rest we're alive. Some days we walk, mostly we drive.
And he liked them, and he started. We had a lot of discussions about lyrics, the topics of lyrics, the subject matter context. And it just evolved. I had a little room at the end of my garden, like a kind of where I can't call it a recording studio, although that's where I recorded, but it's not like a proper studio. It's like a shed. And we recorded it there. Yeah.
Wow. You put out stuff all the time. I was listening to a song last night that you put out, I think last year, called Water.
Yes.
And boy, it's still just as groovy as ever, and I just love that. And you know, and it's fairly new. Yeah.
No more than a drop in the ocean, that's more than enough for me. Expanding, contracting, not overreacting is the path to serenity. Our wisdom is boundless, my worries are groundless, so much have I gathered somehow. Life is beautiful, really it is, like the air that I breathe right now. And let the water run over my body to release my anxiety.
Also, there's a track, you know, Steve, there's a track on that album called Bodies Without a Soul. Check that out, because I was really happy with that as well.
The problems in the system, the streak for some to win. But how can it be any other way when money is the king? Empires are built by lackeys for those who sit up top. But they don't give a monkeys, cause they get to creep with the crop. It's out of control. These bodies without a soul, out of control.
And I put it out as a single. It got very good reaction here. It's on the same album. It's up on Spotify. Bodies Without a Soul. I'd love you to hear that and give me a reaction on that. What do you think of that as well? But
For sure.
Water, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm a soul boy, you know.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are for sure. What's the best way for people to follow you and know what you're doing and find shows and new projects and stuff like that? Where's the best place for people?
Yeah, I've got a website, chazjankel.com. I've got links to this, that, and the other on there. I've got a YouTube channel, Chaz Jankel, and I've got a lot of my stuff is up on Spotify. All my gigs with the Blockheads, you can find them on the blockheadslive.com. I try to make it available. My biggest strength is not media, like it takes me ages to sort of work out links and all that stuff. What comes naturally to others in that area is a little bit more difficult for me, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. Hey, Chaz, thank you so much for giving me some time. I've only gone through about half my notes. I can we do this again sometime and just keep going?
Sure. Yeah.
I'll get in touch
you
with
want. I mean, I it's really lovely for me, genuinely speaking, I find it incredible. I mean, what an age we live in. I can just speak to you. How many miles are you away? Incredible.
Thousands. Yeah.
Thousands. And here we are in real time talking to each other. I mean, there's some clever people out there, aren't there?
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you so much. Well, yeah, but please do, come back, and if you want to have a chat or ask me any other questions, or I'm more than happy to do so. It'd be lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, I will do it for sure. Let's get together again soon, my friend.
Okay. Nice one, Steve. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks. You have a great evening, okay?
Okay. Bye.
For questions or comments, email Steve at steveryan.songoftheday@gmail.com.